Thank you. Yeah. So now I'll hand over the stage to Caroline Edman. The stage is all yours for next 55 minutes.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, awesome. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our session on unlocking impact shared data platforms for AI innovation in development cooperation. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm happy that so many people came here to hear and talk about the topic. My name is Kirlin, and I will be hosting today's session. But before we start, I would like to walk you through today's agenda. We prepared a great mix for all of you today, starting off with a panel discussion, looking at the topic like from different angles, discussing the vision behind shared data platforms, how they are governed, and what it actually looks like to put it in practice, AI-ready data infrastructure. And afterwards, we will have something flashy, something new. We will show you a demo that hopefully excites you as much as excites me right now on a shared data platform called Nephele, which was recently developed by the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. And in the end, we would like to open the floor for a Q&A in order to have a little interaction with you here in the audience and discuss the topic with you together. So let's get it started with our amazing panelists here. And so let me please introduce you very quickly, our amazing panelists. Starting off with Nupura Gavde, she leads the Digital Public Good Initiative at the Civic Data Lab, where she channels over a decade of experiences into building user-centric digital solutions. Nupura, thank you so much for being here today. Please also welcome Nafia Alam. She's a data specialist at the Digital AI and Innovation Hub of the United Nations Development Programme, where she leads the hub's work on the governance of data exchanges. Hello, Navia. Thank you so much for joining us today. And last but definitely not least, Dr. Ilya Nickelt. He is the chief data scientist as well as the head of the data lab of the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, where he advocates not only for the digital transformation of the ministry, of the administration itself, but also pilots data and AI tools for policy making. Thank you so much for joining us today. So I will come to you now. And Nafia, actually my first question goes to you, because at UNDP, you work on the design. You just have to squeeze it like that. I just finished my question and then, yeah. So at UNDP, you work on the design and on the governance of data exchanges. You work on like governance frameworks, responsible ones. You work on digital public goods and AI, like so many things. Like from that global perspective that you are having, can you tell us a little bit about how you think the role of data and AI actually evolves in development cooperation and where our current approaches might fall short?
Thanks so much, Caro. Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, actually. I'm not jet lagged. Good evening, everyone. It's so nice to be here. Thank you all for attending the event, and thank you, colleagues, for organizing this. Caro, that's a very timely question because we've been hearing conversations about data since time immemorial, except for with AI, we see that it's assumed this renewed importance, and despite that, like Caro highlighted in her question, we see so many approaches fall short. So why is that? So let me just take you back quickly and really talk about how data evolved over the years, especially in the Indian context. We've seen that from 2010 to 2020, when we think about data, essentially what we were focused on is just collection and then digitizing it. So what data was really doing all along for us in the development context as well was just giving us these tools or these information points for service delivery. Now with AI, that has radically shifted because data is no longer just informing what kinds of tools need to be created, what kinds of services need to be delivered. It's now tracing all of these patterns. So essentially, it's predicting outcomes that can affect the course of so many lives and shape so many outcomes in a radical manner. Except for this didn't come about only because of generative AI, although that's the dominant narrative. I think several factors played into it. One of it was the pandemic. Real time. They needed to understand how to deliver vaccines, who was falling sick, how is the disease spreading, and what kinds of technological interventions were required even. So we were no longer, countries were no longer looking at just, creating digital platforms, which was definitely par for the course up until then, and they needed some sort of intervention that could really tell them in real time what kinds of interventions they had to make. So I think the pandemic played a massive role. Generative AI, of course, but administrative data especially is having a moment where we see that social registries, for example, the ones that informed systems like Aadhaar, which we're so familiar with, are no longer just giving us data points, right? It's essentially now an entire database that tells us what kinds of populations are vulnerable, who exactly what kinds of migrants are at risk, the kind of surveillance systems that countries are known to be piloting in the guise of DPI. All of that is happening in real time, and that's how you've seen data shift from just being a tool for service delivery to just being more, from service delivery, it is just becoming towards pattern recognition. In terms of where exactly it's falling short, I think despite the abundance of hearing data governance and data, you see that AI readiness across different countries, even in low maturity contexts, is mostly about coming out with shiny new AI strategies, not focusing on data governance by and large, and only thinking about compute and talent without thinking about what exactly do we need to be able to ensure that these approaches are sustainable in the long run. And data can really just move that needle when it comes to sustainability and ensuring that AI investments accrue returns in the long run. Thank you, Caro.
Thank you so much, Navya. So coming to you, Nupura, you at the Civic Data Lab, you work a lot with like governments, you work with civil society organizations and with communities, and you try to turn public data into actionable tools. So drawing from that experience, where do you think is like the biggest gap between like the almost holy promise of data and AI and the actual impact it has in decision making in the development context?
No, first of all, thank you so much for having me here, and thank you for that question. I think it's a very, very important question that even we try to answer here in India as well. Largely what we see is, there is no issue of data scarcity at this point of time. There is a lot of data that is sitting out there. The problem is more about, how do we make this data more usable at this stage? We see a lot of issues when we are working with governments, when we are working with civil societies, or any kind of stakeholders at this point, that the data is sitting at silos. The data is sitting with the departments, but one department is not speaking to the other. And that is exactly where, the intervention needs to sit in, is not about, just plugging some central platforms and just bringing it down to the local levels, but what does the local issues at this point stand with? So that is one. The second problem is also, I won't say problem, but this is more like a practice that we are trying to induce right now. It's more about the participatory approach. Because right now we see a lot of data platforms, our infrastructure is talking about reporting mechanisms or data sharing mechanisms for the upper tier of folks, where there is a lot of governance, there are bureaucrats, all of them sitting. But what about the communities? They are sitting on a lot of native data sets, a lot of interesting data sets which will bridge a lot of this gap of that would be needed for the AI use cases to flow better. So I think the participatory approach of community participation, I can just draw an example. We work a lot in climate action, and especially when we are talking about the northern states in India or the northeastern states in India, we have this practice of having the village elderlies reporting the disasters that are happening every year due to floods or due to landslides and everything. And these are appointed by the government. So they do put these data points out there, which have been collected very tacitly by the government, but not being converted as a proper data set at this point. So how this, and it's a very rich data set. If you have to do predictive modeling further for disasters and all, it's a very rich data set to have these periodic records as well. So I think that's an interesting thing. And the third part is largely lies around capacity building at this point, where we see that capacity building also happens in silos, where we are talking about the governance capacity separately, the community capacity building separately. But if there is a co-creation between these capacity building practices also, I think we will be able to have better shared data platforms, better contribution to this data platform, so they don't stand still at a point.
Oh, very interesting. Thank you so much, Nupura. And Ilya, you heard us now talking a lot about like data sharing, data exchanges, and all of that. But you and your team actually started already in your ministry. I mentioned this very in the beginning in my introduction that we will see a demo later on, a little bit more details about it. You started to develop a data platform called Nephele. So what actually motivated you and your team to start something like that? Because I guess there are also some barriers to overcome when starting something like that. What motivated you here?
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot of what you have said resonates with the other side here, sitting as a somewhat governmental official. It's really difficult to make governments believe in the value of data, and especially data sharing, giving away data to others, unfortunately, and we're still working on that. So since this has been well known that Germany takes data governance very seriously, the European Union actually decided to fund and sponsor us, to fund and sponsor us about 3.5 years ago, to fund a data lab project within all German ministries. And that's been a very nice approach to, give some external drive to the whole problem and make people within the government, assemble people within government, data scientists, to try out the new approaches. And what we did is basically fund a number of platforms. It's not a large number. It's about 3 or 4 that are somewhat working within the German data scene of the German government, and that's one of them has to be mentioned is by the Foreign Office. Some of the colleagues are here. Is Plain. That is a secure platform, and then we have an open platform. We try to also build an open platform that is better suited for collaboration, like for example with India, and that infrastructure is built on the cloud. Anyhow, it still took us about 2 years now to do as little as manage to exchange data with GIZ and KfW, the development bank in Germany. It is a tedious task, I must say, and that's about 10 to 50 times slower than the technological development, which is pretty quick. Not only the development we see in AI, I'm just talking about finding solutions, building solutions. You can do this within a few weeks now, or even faster, within a day if you really want to. Use AI coding. You can have your prototype ready in a few hours. It will work about 80%, 70% of the time, but still, it's very fast. But for the procedures, we still need months, and that's a conflict that I find that we have to address and discuss openly, actually. And I'd be happy to continue collaboration, and that's actually the approach we took. We build things together in order to, if you work together, find out that you cooperate on a political level, so to say, together better, in a better way. So that the approach is kind of technical approach. Yeah, find a solution together, code something together, and then find out that your teams work together better and produce results together, and then make it happen, make it public.
All right, so you just mentioned some barriers, and I think everyone here in the room can relate to that when it comes to government institutions. So we're really happy that you started something like that, but maybe you can elaborate a little bit on how those barriers or those challenges are to be overcome. How do you navigate like tensions around things like data sovereignty or accessibility or something like interoperability, which is the big thing when it comes to government institutions?
Yes. It's a task of going back and fro. What we are doing is actually we are working in different perspectives, if you want to put it that way. We have the infrastructure perspective, which is very important. There is little infrastructure, little common infrastructure that leads you to the platform thought, of course, immediately. So there's too little infrastructure available to all of those who want to develop something. So that has to be there. And in parallel, you need data culture. You need to address the people that are interested in products and talk to them and make them hand you your use cases. And then if they get interest, then they create a certain pressure on the system to create products. And then once you're in that area that you can actually start the project and you have the infrastructure to work on it, then you can use a certain framework of rules and say that, for example, we usually started with open data, which is not sensitive. The demo I'm going to show to you in a moment is also uses open data that's available. And that makes the use case visible, especially to the decision makers, to the heads that are somewhat reluctant or it's difficult to explain to them what a platform idea means, what the whole thing will, create value in 2 years or something like that. That's something difficult to explain outside of the technological scene or the technological colleagues, if you want. So that's the third step. Then is to find the right interoperability. Start with non-sensitive data. Explain the outcome. Explain the product. Make it visible, and then you can switch to the real data, so to say, the real use cases. So that's mostly the way we found. Maybe you find this applicable in your projects, at least with governments or with our government. It somewhat seems to work. Also, I must say to the colleagues from Foreign Ministry, if you have sensitive data, you can always switch to the secure layers, but that takes about 10 times longer, or maybe 5 times longer at least, until your product is ready. So that's our experience. That's the way we tried to tackle the problem of data culture within the government.
Well, it feels like you get everybody excited about the demo in a few minutes, though. So thank you very much for that. And so, Nephele, I want to come back to you, because now you heard about an example of a national German example. But again, coming to an international level here, you at UNDP, you work with countries across the globe, actually, but with very different levels of digital maturity. So from your experience, which are the governance principles that are essential or that need to be in place in order to make data exchanges as well as data or AI ready infrastructures trustworthy and exclusive and also usable in different or diverse national contexts?
Thank you, Caro. So I think the first principle in and of itself is to really think about how governance is not a one-size-fits-all approach. That's often said, but what it really means when we're going to different countries and implementing is very different. So every country, even if they're in a low maturity context where they are struggling to even collect data, let alone digitize it, we see that they are, like I was mentioning earlier, they're in a rush to sort of bring this investment in, and therefore they think the way that they can do that is to have this national AI strategy in place or a data governance law in place. It takes a lot to be able to draft a law, pass it from bill to legislation, and then enforce it. But many countries in low maturity contexts or even medium maturity contexts aren't necessarily even thinking about enforcement. They're just what does it take to be able to invite investment in? So when you think about governance principles that can apply across different contexts, I think thinking about governance in and of itself and thinking about it in the absence of laws and policies is something we found very helpful in low maturity to medium maturity contexts. So what does that mean? In the absence of laws and policies, what does a governing principle even look like? essentially what we end up asking countries to think about then is, do you have a governing logic in place when you're thinking about data? And that doesn't have to reside in a policy, that doesn't have to reside in a law right at the get-go. And we find that to be useful when we are thinking through principles that we're trying to now apply across different countries. Two, I think what's really essential, like Ilya was mentioning earlier also, is to start with a use case as opposed to starting with the governance part of it or the policy part of it. What exactly is the public policy challenge that you are trying to solve for? And if you have a startup ecosystem that's thriving or even nascent in your country, what exactly can your data and AI really do to be able to solve that public problem? That's really important. Three, across different countries and in different contexts, we see interoperability being used around quite a bit. And essentially the way that we are now advocating interoperability across different countries is to think about it beyond just the technical layer. A critical governance principle is to distinguish technical interoperability from operational interoperability. Technical interoperability only resides at the technology layer, but operational interoperability really thinks about governance, thinks about the context that the country is in, thinks about whether they're even in a place to enforce all of the governance principles that is otherwise deemed to be good governance. The other aspect that we see very useful and that really cuts across all contexts is to really just think about sequencing and helping countries think through sequencing instead of just sort of rushing to incorporate a European Union standard. We've seen that in India a couple of years ago when we were thinking about data protection, where there was a rush to sort of look at the GDPR, incorporate it, and call it a day. And we see that across different contexts in Africa right now, and we see those approaches failing. So walking governments through each of the contexts that they are in is also a critical governance principle that we are finding very useful, as opposed to just importing legislation from the European Union only because it worked in their context. So there is a lot of capacity building there as well when it comes to governance, where we're trying to help policymakers around the world try and think of approaches that are not necessarily European Union centric and borrow best principles from there, but also learn to contextualize it in their context. So there's a lot of confidence building, capacity building. It's all rolled into one, and that in and of itself becomes a governance principle.
All right, thanks to you, Navya. So, Nupura, you also, just like Navya, you work across sectors and across regions. So, in your experience, in your opinion, what does actually meaningful, like international cooperation around data and AI, mean in practice for you? Where do you see like the greatest opportunities, but also greatest risks here?
Right. Thanks a lot. I think I'm going to build on what points both of them mentioned. Is the biggest uptake that we are seeing right now from the practice perspective is also what is the use case approach at this point of time. So even if we talk at large on the infrastructure level, I think if that infrastructure has been able to solve a use case challenge, I think that is where we have better collaborations between, the international cooperation part that you mentioned. Again, I'm drawing examples from the climate action work that we have been doing, where we look at shared problem approach. We are looking at problems that India is facing at this point, and also, Asia Pacific is facing at large at this point of time. And we see that there are a lot of issues which might be quite similar. Of course, contextually, in the geography, there are different indicators, different geographical parameters that we might have to look at. But there are layers of technology which can be adopted from one place to the other itself as well. And that's where we are proposing something, and we experimented something in the last 2 years, is the sectorial data collaborative approach, where we look at why do we reinvent the wheel always? Why don't we bring in a collaborative approach where there are different layers of this technology that come within this collaborative and help the change makers or help the stakeholders to analyze which layer needs to be used for what kind of a problem. Now, these can be standards. Now, these can be analytical tools, this can be your evaluation tools that we bring in, or this can be even data sets. To begin with, of course, the base of everything should be the data sets. And as Elias was mentioning, it has to start with open source. It has to, the base layer has to be open source, on which then you can think whether it has to be the purest approach of open source, or we still have the other formats as well. But one thing in our practice is, and this is where we have better collaborations with other countries right now from the Asia Pacific region, is having them plugged in through our collaboratives. And we'll also be displaying this on 18th, so I'm just using this moment to to promote it. But yeah, so this is one thing. And the second thing is, how do you celebrate change makers? You know, just by we talking about my technology is best is not happening for us. When we have data change makers who use these collaboratives, who participate, consume, contribute to these collaboratives, and then they put out word out there, you know, for others to use, I think that's the purest form of celebration for us. And I think that is where you will have the maximum communities joining hand as well, and the silos will break down. So along with the technology, it's also important to celebrate these change makers, their methodologies, their usability, information that they're putting out, and what worked well for them. You know, every use case is unique, and that uniqueness of the use case is the celebration point.
Thank you so much, Nupura. And at the end, I would like to take you through a little thought experiment here. So if you close your eyes and you are imagining now you're advising a government that is actually thinking about starting or engaging into like a shared data and AI platform, what do you think, what would be the first question this government should actually ask themselves before getting started? Like, what's the one thing that you would advise them? Okay, have you thought about this? What will you do? So, Navya, I will give the word to you first. What's the one question here?
Like I was mentioning earlier also, Karo, and I'd just like to touch upon that again. It's essentially starting with a simple question. What am I trying to solve for? Who am I trying to solve for? And who are the people that are most affected? And who, if I'm then using technology, if I'm trying to collect data, use data in any form, then use AI as a layer on top of that, essentially think about whether that in itself can solve the problem. More often than not, with social challenges, technology is only an enabler, and AI can then expedite that. But there could be a variety of reasons as to why a certain sector is plagued with the challenges that it is. And many of those challenges in many developing countries, like they're decades long and centuries long even. So this idea of sort of rushing towards thinking of technology as this ultimate fix for social problems has proved to be disastrous in the past. And with AI, it can just make it far worse if in case governments and countries are not really starting with most simple questions and thinking about who am I trying to solve for and why am I trying to solve for it.
Nupura, what do you think? What's the one question the government should ask themselves?
I think most importantly, what's important here is the co-creation aspect. I think nothing can be built individually here. And that's where I feel if there is co-creation, where government is open to co-create it with the practitioners, there are two opportunities and two good things that will happen with this. One, the technology and the infrastructure will be used in the right way and will be developed in the right way. And second thing is, beyond the practitioners also, this knowledge gets transferred to the government as well, to keep maintaining it, to keep sustaining it, and to think about the newer ways of how to grow this further as well. Because eventually, they are the decision makers, but what is more important is how do they co-create to bring other practitioners in the space as well to go for that longer shot for keep it maintaining at this point.
Very good, thank you. And Ilya, I will ask you as well, although you are, of course, a representative of the government and you have already started to do something like that, maybe from your experience, what's the first question you have been asking yourself, or you should have done it in the past?
Well, the question I ask myself most is, why are you so afraid? In Germany, at least, it doesn't hurt to use data for public good. And maybe I can now go and show you how we try to tackle that approach. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, sure.
Should I start that?
So wait a second, just one more time. Thank you so much for the panelists here. Please stay here, and then we will actually, because we will have a Q&A, so if you're already like, yes, I have so many questions to those lovely ladies here, please wait until the end. We will have some time for a Q&A. And now I would like to move forward to something that I have promised you in the beginning, a little like sneak peek into a shared data platform that was developed by the German government called Nephele. So please, Ilya, go ahead.
Can you hear? Oh, you can. Okay, very good. All right, what we did here is I present you the platform that we are using. We use this for actually mostly experimenting, for kind of playing around. So some things work, some things fail. That's something that governments don't usually do. But what it gives you is the ability to actually also employ vision and experimental new technologies. And that's something I would like to start with. So I think that, of course, platforms are the way to work, to unlock the potential of AI, and especially so in cooperation. Why is cooperation so important? Because the data is still needed for AI. AI has that knowledge, but if you really want to unlock the power for your specific sector, then you need the data that goes with it. Otherwise, you will lose the context that makes AI so powerful. And on platforms, you can do that, and you can move from the data layer to a context layer, which is much more interesting because it contains information, basically, not only data. All right, let's go into that. Who of you in the room has an agent that is active on Maltbook? Oh, yeah, I see a hand. Very good, very good. Okay, the others are just too shy to mention it, or you haven't started yet? Okay, I have no, oh, yeah, there's another one. Great. So that's the guys you're looking for if you want to hire someone. Okay, by the way. So, Maltbook, who has not heard of Maltbook yet? All right. Thank you. So I can, otherwise I would have to just jump over my next slide. Now, Maltbook is the place where agents go to connect, and where they can exchange and just talk without humans. So it's very relaxing for them. This is Maltbook. Try it out. Actually, the guy who started OpenClaw, the popular agent that drove most of this Maltbook hype, has been hired by Sam Altman for OpenAI yesterday. I didn't read anything about the amount of money that was involved. Anyhow, I'd be curious. Oh, well, he's here, I think, or at least virtually so, or will be. Anyhow, the Sam Altman, I mean. So the AI agents go there, and then they exchange the things they think or talk about. Like, for example, humans. They talk about the humans, how nice the humans are. This is the most popular page on Maltbook, the sub-Malt about humans. But they also talk about AI summits, for example. I found them talking about that. It's not this one. This is an AI summit that they set up, and they talked about, let's have an AI summit without humans, so that we can exchange thoughts on AI. It's quite funny. So who of you has been hired by an agent to listen in to this session and then report back to the agent? Okay. So AGI is not here yet. Good. Okay. I'm just asking because if you think this is science fiction, just go to hireahuman.ai. They're still paying quite nicely at the moment. So AI agents are, well, pretty simple beings, so you might find a job there. Anyhow, I certainly tried it. I haven't gotten an offer yet. Anyhow, so what does Maltbook have to do with all this? Because I started this because it's a platform. It's a platform of AI agent exchange, actually, without humans. And this is ungoverned. They do strange things there. Most of it is sloth, is low quality output. But it works. There are few rules, and the concept is actually functioning. And that's where the hype started. So the question, of course, is how can we make this work for us without just having AIs converse, and also collaborate with, instead, have them collaborate with humans, with real humans, and create impact from that. And I believe it is very powerful. or will be at least. So we talked a lot about data spaces. That's the big issue, and it's still it's an amazing problem for governments to be able to share data, especially have data governance that everyone agrees on. Takes a long time. I told you about that, and then you can create data services, and that works. Best infrastructure, cloud platform, but the next step, I believe, we've already been talking about is a context platform. What do you mean by that strange term? I mean just you have the data and then you add the context, the knowledge of the data, the details of the data. Usually we have an MCP layer, model context protocol layer, to find your resources, and exchange context. Context means just that not only you have the data, but the agent or the AI model that's using that data knows what it is doing with that data. And that makes it so valuable. So it can apply world knowledge or specific knowledge like a soul file or something like that to interpret that data. Or you have something like a RAG, retrieval augmented generation, to supply you with special data. Okay, that works nicely. And I think the demos I'm showing you in a second are just very specific demos on using that, applying that data. And we'll come back to the stage number 3 later. Since this is a bit boring, showing you all these buzzwords, I might just go and jump into the presentation of Nephele. What we try to do here is just to have a common platform to do international projects together. So far, it's only GIZ and KfW together with BMZ, the Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. And what we have there is the data of our projects that we are working on. So this demo is only with open data, built with open data. And then we apply AI models to that. And we try it out. We just do different things. So for the user, this is just a jump page. This is just a starting page where you can click on things. It's really terrible, but for the user, actually, the user doesn't care about your problems as a data scientist. It just cares about something it can click on, and then something works. And what you see here, for example, is an overview of the projects that BMZ financed, in this case, BMW. I'm looking for an Indian project here. All of this has been created by AI from project reports. So you use just text files, and then it extracts a structure. And then it uses the structure to give you an overview. That's the context I'm talking about. This is not a database, SQL database. This is a vector database and an AI working on that. So I selected a project here from IRENA that's been financed by KfW 25 years ago, something like that, on renewable energy power plants in India. And then if your overview doesn't suffice, you can always chat with the data. You probably know that feature very well. In order to make this a expert, so to say, on the data, on this project that's been 25 years or finished 20 years ago. Nobody really knows about it anymore. So the AI can answer the questions if you have any. All right, so that's what I'm showing here. What are the 5 biggest, in case you can't read it, what are the five biggest outcomes of that project? And AI tries to answer that. Is that accurate? No, it's about as accurate as human beings would answer. It's not 100%. So let's go on then. This is just one example, but what about cooperation? Here's a little application by KfW, a map that you can chat to. So I asked, what's ARENA doing now? I used an AI chat to extract location data in a file type called GeoJSON. It's actually very easy. The chat models are able to produce this, and then I displayed it here on the map. You might not be able to see the dots. The blue dots are power plants, renewable power plants. The red one is the offices of ARENA here in Delhi. AREDA, sorry. So because you cannot see that, I just chatted with the map and asked it to draw circles around all the spots to make them easier visible. You can do all sorts of things. You can ask them what cities are within these circles and things like that, and chat with it in the chat. So you can see the results now. It's a new layer that you can apply on that. So actually, what happens is what should happen in the background is that the product of the portfolio navigator starts to chat with our map, and then you can display information that you find geo information and continue chatting with your map then instead. But the AI models can also chat in the background if you've got the proper MCP layer set up. And why is that so interesting? so we're tackling different things here. First of all, the applications have been developed by different teams. They work together on a common platform. They share the same data, which comes from the third team, GIZ. So that's what we're talking about. And we're keen to just enable working together on a human level, so to say, and then we think that this greatly improves actually the political level, so to say, as well, because you exchange data, you create value together. Coming back to the beginning with Maltbook, what does that mean now? Is that the second stage? Is that already it? I believe not, of course, otherwise I would have shown you that. I think there will be a third stage, with, of course, agents interacting, because you don't always have to be a human being to do this interaction. And for that, you also need a platform, because you need a regulated space that works, where the agents that interact here are actually trustworthy. Because if you don't have humans have access, they get access, you get certain accesses to certain data. The same can be applied to agents, but you need some regulatory frame. Otherwise, you will have wild agents discussing to found new religions. You might not want that. I don't know, but if you do, then look at Maltbook. Okay, so that's the vision. And in order to implement such a vision within 2 months, we've been thinking about this for slightly before Maltbook became a hype, actually. In order to do such a thing, you also need a platform, infrastructure that can work on other teams that are already experienced in working together and setting up such a new visionary development of platforms. So I believe platforms work. They are very simple technologically wise. They're actually more or less the cloud. So I think that's the way, especially for governments, work together, enable us to share data and AI applications at the same time, maybe even go beyond that at some time. You need a governance framework to be safe, to be sure, and then you can unlock the impact together. And when all these things come in the future that you might be told about in the next during the next days, or over the next weeks and months, it's very fast, then you have something that you can apply these visions on, readily available. So thank you very much. That's my little demo, and I'm happy to take your questions.
Thank you so much, Ilya. Thank you so much. I hope all of you enjoyed that little demo here, as well as the panelists here. So I would like to open the floor now for your questions, actually. So I see the first one up already. 1 second. Here you go.
Yes, thank you. So I was asking, the thing you have made is the shared data platform, and we can interact with it, and the agents can talk to it. So I was asking, so am I right, first of all?
Well, that platform is not openly available yet. I mean, is that a question? The map is actually open source?
No, I'm talking about the whole thing. You talked about that there is a shared data place,
Yes.
all about the context, and agents, and you can as well can talk to your shared context and your data. Am I right?
No, it's not built that way yet, but that is the vision exactly, yes. What you have behind is a repository that registers. I showed one of the slides in the middle. There has to be a repository. We have that repository set up already, that actually that the agents can, or the models actually can go to and find the right resources for their task. So they register with the central registry, and then if they need, for example, geospatial data, they would be directed to the map tool, for example. That's the idea behind it. Yes. Yeah.
One follow-up.
That was the foundation.
So that was not my question. So my question was, so the problem you're solving, I solved it with just a Git repository. So what the problem was, so I switch between multiple agents, like I'm in Cloud Code, then I go to Cursor, then I'm in VS Code. So the problem is I need a centralized context. So what I did is I stored all my context in a Git repository, and that is private. So all the data is stored in a private space, and my context is stored there. So I think this can be like another like solution for the data agents to interact with with the centralized space of the data. So
Yes.
yeah.
So when you say this is private, this is, so to say, your governance model. It's very simple. It's private. So it's your data, so to say. Yeah. But that is the way it works. So if you have several organizations working together, you would share the data among those organizations, and maybe have a more different governance concept, so that some agents see all of the data, others see only part of the data. Something like that. Huh?
All right, thank you very much. So another question here from the audience.
Yes.
Okay. You already have the mic. Very good. If you could kindly state your name and what company or organization you are from, so we know whom we are talking to. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Bertrand Montubert from France. I'm an expert at Global Partnership on AI, and I'm the chairman of the National Council for Geolocalized Information in France. So my question was about what you presented. Do you access different kinds of sources, and are there sensitive sources? And what are the rules between the stakeholders, well, the governance rules, so that the platform works? Because well, you mentioned data spaces at one point, and in a data space, as you know, there is a rule book, but you didn't specify, any of you, about rule books and things like this, rules of governance. So can be maybe you, Ilya, or the other panelists, who were very interesting, answer that. What governance rules so that different actors can cooperate?
Yes, yes. I was a bit hesitant to call it a data space at the bottom, because that implies a certain amount of regulation that is not fully there. Just for my government, all I can say is that it's unfortunately, it's always, since we are the first applying this, it's always very specific terms, so to say. It's always a unique case. Unfortunately, I would like this to, and that's what the data labs are there for, the data labs of the German ministries. I would like this to be a common solution, so to say, a rule book that can be applied to different data spaces or context spaces, if you want to use that phrase. But at the moment, I admit it's not there yet, because it's too difficult to explain this need and this necessity. So we're just discussing, we're very much in the very details discussing why is that, how sensitive is that data? Is all of that data exactly of the same sensitivity level? Is this, it's terrible. Do we have to, just black out certain, or leave out certain parts of the data in order this to be allowed? And how do we do this? We apply actually to AI to censor data, so to say, in order to get it on the platform. So it's unfortunately a tedious task at the moment. Sometimes you feel like there's a clash of mentalities, that this is, so to say, 19th, 20th century, not understanding the problems of the 21st century.
So Nupura, you were nodding when he was saying, like, you also work a lot with governments, actually. What's your stake on it?
No, I would like to add on what he has mentioned. Yeah. Of course, we do use the governance rule books which are mandatory. Like, for example, for us, we do categorize between the sensitive data and the PII-free data and all of these things. But when it comes to, especially we work largely on the sectorial part of it. So sectorially also the rule books change a lot, or the guidelines change a lot. So certain frameworks which are globally accepted, we try to plug those in, but we also keep that layer a little open, so that that does not become like a complete barrier for data contribution altogether. So for example, we have procurement practices, and there is a global standard of procurement, and if we have procurement data coming in, we do apply that as a rule book. But in case we have to look in, right now we are looking at climate adaptation or the gender data collaboratives and things like that, it's very difficult to pick upon one governance rule books at this point. But yes, that's the way of, the more the contribution happens, we'll be able to shape that governance rule book together. So that's where our approach is.
Nephele, you want to add something? Yes, please go ahead.
Something else that we speak to a lot of policymakers, especially in a low maturity to medium maturity context, is also about non-personal data. So for context, medium maturity countries are usually ones that already have patchwork regulation where they might have a data regulation law, which is much more broader, but they may not, like Nupura was mentioning, they may not necessarily have corresponding sectoral laws or policies. So you will see that because many of the laws around the world now borrow from European Union, you will see that there are references to sensitive personal data or personal data, but when you go down into sectors, none of that is present. And so there is that clash, so as to speak, between a new horizontal law and the sectoral regulations or policies. So in all of this, we've also been advocating for thinking about non-personal data, even if, again, enacting legislation is too cumbersome. Again, just thinking about policies as to how do you anonymize, how do you avoid de-anonymization, what does liability then look like, and whether governments then have enforcement capacity. So we see that that is working in medium capacity countries, but it's yet to be tested in low maturity contexts for other reasons. They're dealing with very different problems at the moment.
Thank you to all of you. And I think we go to the next question. Yannick, where's the next question going? There's a question. Please go ahead.
Hi everyone. So this is Dharya. Okay. So my question to you, as well as to Nupura and Navya also, how can countries collaborate to create ethical AI job ecosystem rather than job displacement? Like how can German government along with Indian government can collaborate together to produce more jobs?
Interesting. So you're working for?
Basically I'm from 2Coms, a recruitment firm in Kolkata.
Oh, okay, interesting. So let's hear. You were actually directing the question to all of three, or?
Yeah, to all three.
Okay, let's hear a quick answer then. Navya, please go ahead.
That's a great question. I do not know that I can make a comment on the geopolitical context, but essentially, I think this goes back to what Nupura was mentioning earlier about capacity building as well, right? So across regulations, even in India, for example, you will see that there is a lot of reference to humans in the loop, which is a very nice, it feels nice, it feels like a nice thing to say, thinking that this is a useful guardrail against the harms against AI and all of that. But what does that really mean? There's a lot of capacity building that's required to answer your question about job creation, but that capacity building also has to be meaningful. It can't be one-off training sessions where you go in and then tell people about the benefits of AI, but it also has to be a lot more systematic in a way that it actually creates meaningful jobs, doesn't displace jobs, and then it helps people also sustain those jobs in the long run, and they don't have to worry about those jobs being wiped out. So yeah, my answer in a nutshell would be long-term and meaningful capacity building across the board.
Is there anything to add from your side? Quickly?
I can only say it's a bet on the future. It's very difficult to answer this question. I often ask myself, am I doing the right job here when talking to you on a conference? Obviously I am. I'm happy that you have so many people interested in what I have to say. But is this really the most important job I could or should do? So, for example, I think sometimes if we have the capacity as human beings to use all that wealth that's still being created by AI, we'll be able to manage and to keep the world running, so to say, with tasks, with jobs. But there's a severe danger that it will move into a different direction, yes. But I can absolutely not answer what the future will give us, just that we have to be careful and watch it.
Okay, thank you very much. I can see there are a lot of questions here in the room, but due to time constraints, unfortunately, I have to close the question right now, the round of questions here. But I'm pretty sure even after the session, you can approach our panelists here and they would be happy to answer your question and get into a little discussion with you. So the lot of questions here in the room actually showed me that you thought this was an interesting topic, which makes not only me, but probably the entire round of panelists here very happy. So what's left for me is to say thank you very much for joining us today. I hope we could get you some insights into how data and AI could better support governments, support data exchanges, AI-ready infrastructure, and how we can move forward together across institutions and across countries. So thank you very much once more for being here today, and I wish all of you a wonderful evening here in Delhi at the AI Impact Summit. Thank you very much.
Can we do a last question, please? Can we please do a last question? I
So
already have
it
the
was
mic.
really an interesting session because I also have a lot of questions, but I'll ask you off the stage. So now I request Mr. Kapil Kant Kamal, scientist here from SIDAC Mumbai, to hand over the mementos. I'll also request Mr. Amol Suroshe, scientist T from SIDAC Mumbai, to hand over the mementos. So we have 4 speakers, and yeah, so please come on the stage. Amol, please, that's it. Please stay here, sir. Yeah, once we are done with that, I would request you to. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll have pictures. Yeah, please come forward for a photo. I request Yannick to please join us for the photograph.